Hello, 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 everybody. This is Dr. Garrett Smith, the nutrition detective around these here YouTube parts. It is the 123rd episode of the Love Your Liver livestream. And today, because the media machine has been putting out new scare stuff about white lung syndrome, and now multiple people out there are claiming that white lung syndrome is vitamin A deficiency. And this is what's causing it, supposedly, which I disagree with heartily, as I'm sure those of you who are regulars here know. I wanted to debunk this and show you the more logical reasons that can help prevent pneumonia, that can help treat pneumonia. We're just going to say that white lung syndrome is a pneumonia, and that we're going to go over how this all connects with toxic bile theory, zinc deficiency, protein deficiency, taurine deficiency, niacin deficiency. We're going to go over all the common things that I typically go over. I'm going to save the selenium and the magnesium and potassium and molybdenum. I'm going to leave those out today because we got so much to go over. But I really want to debunk it. And the whole idea, what I'm going to show you, I'm going to also show you that what they perceive as vitamin A deficiency in the blood actually represents zinc deficiency, protein deficiency, potentially taurine deficiency, and all these other things that go along with the same patterns that we go over every time. And we're going to go over how in China, there's probably a lot of vitamin A toxicity going on, and their diet is lacking in red meat. I mean, you don't expect communist governments to be giving their people very much red meat, do you? That might make their people too healthy. So we'll just cover all of this stuff. So let's head into it. So, Joe, let's switch over. So this was the video that several people have brought. Dr. John Campbell, PhD, they brought his video to my attention. And it's saying vitamin A and mystery pneumonia. And he proceeds to go into saying it's vitamin A deficiency. And all the commenters are like, this is so wonderful. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. And it's okay. So that's he presented his side of it. Let me get the URL. Here we go. Let me get back into my chat. So there's this. Okay. Now, let's go over just real quick some articles. Nature Journal. What's behind China's mysterious wave of childhood pneumonia? Now, some people will think that Dr. John Campbell is good because he kind of did a 180 on the pokies. Like them. And now just because, so here's the mistake, people. If you just think that because somebody's against the pokies that they're now trustworthy, that doesn't mean anything. Remember, they always play both sides against the middle. They control both sides. Okay. So what's behind China's mysterious wave of childhood pneumonia? Because this is mostly happening in children. Or actually, it may all be in children. I haven't done that much research into it. Scientists expected a surge in respiratory disease. I guess they're just saying because it's wintertime. But what is happening in China is unusual. Okay, so we have this. So we set this up. So it's coming out and it's, this scary white lung. They gave it a new name, right? It's got to have a new scary name. And it's got supposedly a mildly new presentation. Okay, you want to know what else? I'm gonna just hit this minimally. Of course, this part is important that I'm about to say. Yes, the pokies are a new ingredient to the mix of toxins and deficiencies that people are exposed to. Would it make sense that if there was, I don't know, a new gene therapy or a new toxin injected into people, that you could see a new presentation of disease? This should make sense. But what we're going to go over is we're going to connect this to everything else. So just think of it as it's an additional ingredient, the pokey. Okay. Now, what about in the US? Let me get the link for you guys, and then we'll make it a little bigger. Wait, wrong thing to make bigger. That was the wrong screen. So I'm just going to hit on this real quick. Ohio white lung pneumonia cases not linked to China outbreak or a novel pathogen, experts say. Okay. So it's not a novel pathogen. Some of them were speculating it was Mycoplasma pneumonia, which is walking pneumonia, which is not a terrible kind generally. But if they're saying it's not a pathogen, which germ theory, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on that. But they're saying maybe it's not germ theory. Maybe it's not. Okay. So what could be spreading among the population? Oh, I don't know. Certain injections, certain toxicities, certain nutrient deficiencies. None of these require a pathogen. Okay? So, Ben, if you want to watch my other videos on the CUFID and what CUFID actually is, and it's a massive dump of toxic bile into the system that contains all sorts of things that do deplete zinc, then yeah, I'm not going to hit on that too much today because we got too much to go over. So what I wanted to cover here just real quick is my Twitter thread. Now, for those of you who don't follow me on Twitter, you should. I put tons of stuff on Twitter demonstrating, the science behind what I do. This is one of my big threads where I go over the actual research behind the vitamin A toxicity epidemic. Now, the reason I'm not going to go find the papers in here, but here's a funny thing about childhood pneumonia that we're talking about. When you go through this thread, you will find that some of the absolute highest liver storage vitamin A numbers were in children. Absolute high, some of the absolute highest in the study. Like it was really high in generally kids up to like 10 years old. And then it would kind of go down for a while in the ages, and then it would start going up again. Grant Genereux actually came up with a great theory about why this happens. And that's that when kids start growing bigger, right? They're growing 3D. They're growing length, width, height. So if your liver grows 3D, length, width, height, all of a sudden you're making brand new liver tissue. So in a way, you can sort of dilute the liver's toxicity. And then you could see, you ever hear about, oh, I had allergies as a kid, and then all of a sudden they went away. Or I had asthma as a kid, and all of a sudden it went away. And everybody's like, we don't know why this happens. It just happens. Well, what I'm telling you is it's the liver actually growing bigger, making new liver tissue, and it's able to kind of spread out the toxicity, and it makes new tissue for storage. So you can pull more of it out of the blood, put it into storage where it's away from the blood, and it's away from, like we're going to talk about today, the lungs, and all the other places. And this is how childhood diseases can disappear. But then they often come back, or the diseases come back in another form as people get older. They didn't escape it. They just prolonged the time until it came back. Okay. So that's this thread. Now, let's go into, this is a post of mine on Twitter. Oh, for those of you who don't have Twitter, I don't know if it's still working. If somebody could check this on these Twitter threads, what you do is you take out the twitter.com and you type in nitter, NITTER.net. And that should allow those of you who don't have a Twitter account to see these links on your computer without having to go into Twitter. Now, If you wanted to just join Twitter just to follow me at NutriDetect, I think that would be worth it too. So what I did this last week, I did one post here where I was talking about the new white lung syndrome. The two posts I mentioned here was one on the vitamin A deficiency doesn't exist thread, which we're going to be referring to multiple times here. And then I did a whole post on white lung syndrome. So there's that one. Now we're just going to move on. So people in the mainstream, Mike Roberto made this post. And this just goes along with the vitamin A deficiency doesn't exist thread. And I wanted to point this out before anybody starts going, but serum retinol is low. That's what Dr. Campbell said. Serum retinol being low doesn't tell you anything about what's in the liver. Now you can go to this thread, or I'm sorry, this is a comment thread, but you can go here and find the reference that this is from. I want you to listen to this. Serum retinol, blood vitamin A concentrations, okay? Blood vitamin A concentrations were non-significantly lower in subjects with hypervitaminosis A than in those with optimal status, normal, showing the non-sensitivity of this biomarker to high total liver reserves is what that stands for. Total liver storage of vitamin A. They just told you that blood vitamin A can actually be lower in cases of full-blown liver vitamin A toxicity. Are you catching this? They just said it. So anybody out there who claims that serum retinol, blood vitamin A, means anything knows nothing about the research. Okay? If we start showing that vitamin A in the blood goes up in disease conditions and that blood vitamin A goes up as people age, and yet people get sicker as they age in general, then we can start making some assumptions, because the one way you could force blood vitamin A up in enough people would be to give it enough. But people who are quoting low blood vitamin A as meaning something in terms of deficiency, low vitamin A is garbage. It doesn't mean anything. You could be massive. Some of the sickest people I see have low blood vitamin A, and we put them on a vitamin A detox program, and they start getting better, and their blood vitamin A starts going up, which you'll see with what we do. Okay? So let's keep moving. So thanks, Mike, for posting that. Now, I wanted to go over, so we're talking about China, right? China was where this new white lung pneumonia, white lung syndrome came from. So, and I believe Dr. Campbell was stating, oh, vitamin A deficiency is really prevalent in China. So this was a post I did on cataracts. Now, I think I went over this in a previous live stream. So what we did here, I'm going to run through this real quick. 6 years ago, CBC ran a video talking about the highest rates of cataracts in the world happening in China. Okay. I show the original YouTube video here. Here's the quote from the video. For an aging rural population with the highest number of cataract sufferers in the world, no one knows exactly how many in China, though it's well in the tens of millions. Okay, now if you watch this video, you'll see these people who they're showing have an orangish tint to them. Okay, they look orangish, and they have tons of liver spots all over their faces. Okay, this is not a good sign for vitamin A toxicity. Okay, and as I go over the research here, liver and age spots are lipofuscin, or fuscin. I don't know how to pronounce this word. I got to look this up. Which is caused by toxic vitamin A accumulation. I have two threads here showing that lipofuscin is vitamin A toxicity. And I have a quote here down here, we'll get to it. The orangish skin, this is, you ever know somebody who, or maybe you did, we've had people eat too much red palm oil and turn orange. That's carotenoids. We've had people drink too much carrot juice and turn orangish or yellowish. We've had people eat too much liver and turn orangish or yellowish. If your skin ever turned orangish or yellowish from high vitamin A consumption, food or supplement, you are by definition still vitamin A toxic in your liver if you have not done something to get rid of it. If you lost the yellowish or orangish tint, what your body did was it broke down the carotenoids in your skin and sent them as retinol esters to your liver. I've gone over this research before. The first thing you have to do to get out of vitamin A toxicity, the first stage, is getting rid of the orangish or yellowish skin. So here, just so people understand that lipofuscin is vitamin A, lipofuscin is a fluorescent material. They use the luciferase enzyme to study the fluorescence of vitamin A. It's funny that luciferase is linked to studying vitamin A, right? Lipofuscin is a fluorescent material with significant phototoxic potential that accumulates with age. Oh, vitamin A accumulates. In the retinal pigment epithelium of the eye, it is thought to be a factor in retinal degeneration diseases. The most extensively characterized lipofuscin component, N-retinylidene, N-retinylethanolamine, A2E. Okay, so these Chinese folks are getting cataracts and they're turning orange from how much vitamin A they're eating. Okay, so where does it come from? Here's the quote. His mother dries sweet potatoes by the fire for dinner. It's the only vegetable they can grow here. Now, remember, these are like rural areas of China mostly. They're probably eating mostly an all plant-based diet. Maybe they're getting some eggs on occasion, which would add to the vitamin A problem. Maybe they're eating lots of sweet potatoes. Probably eating a lot of rice. Not a great diet in terms of getting the things you need to protect you from vitamin A, like zinc and protein and taurine, and even niacin. So anyway, that's I won't go over the whole thing about how they edited out the word sweet from sweet potatoes in the later CBC website version. They took out the word sweet from sweet potatoes to take away the vitamin A connection, but you can see it on the video that it's an orange potato, so you should know what it is. Anyway, I have another link here to my thread about how people talk about blue light and vitamin A toxicity. Blue light only damages your eyes when there is vitamin A present. This is what the research says. It's not that vitamin A gets more toxic when it's exposed to blue light. It's that blue light cannot damage your eyes without vitamin A present. Here, I'll just put this link here too. Okay, moving on. This is my post on the white lung syndrome. I'm going to run through this in a fairly quick fashion. This is just another variation of toxic bile theory. People leaking toxic bile and everything it contains. Toxic copper, toxic vitamin A. They tend to be zinc deficient. Let's just run through these real quick. So, first, pneumonia. Can we find evidence that there is higher amounts of bile in the blood, which is cholestasis, which is liver injury, which is toxic bile leaking into the blood? If you need to see the videos of mine, the live streams of mine that cover toxic bile theory to catch up, go watch number 53 and number 71. Okay? Those are the ones that give you the background on toxic bile theory. But toxic bile in the blood is the cause of all these chronic diseases and even acute diseases. So let's just verify that there's too much bile in the blood in pneumonia. Okay? The present study indicates that elevation of serum bilirubin, if you have too much bilirubin in your blood, you have too much bile in your blood. Somebody was asking, well, there's two types. Bilirubin. It's supposed to go out in your bile. It's not really supposed to be in your blood. Anyway, The present study indicates that elevation of serum bilirubin and of blood urea are both common accompaniments of pneumonia. In Port Moresby, pneumonia remains the commonest cause of jaundice, which is too much bilirubin in the skin. They just so happen to turn a nice shade of yellow among patients admitted to the medical wards. Okay. Now, what happens when babies are born to mothers who have excess bile in their blood? So, ladies, this is why you want to try to fix yourself before you get pregnant. This is why I recommend women who are planning on having a child or more children, but they want to do the vitamin A detox, that you do the detox for 6 months solid before you try to get pregnant. Okay? So a common thing in pregnancy is intrahepatic cholestasis, where your liver is directly leaking bile into your bloodstream. Your liver has sprung leaks of bile. And this is one reason, ladies, if you've had rough pregnancies and you felt like hot garbage, you were leaking toxic bile into your blood. This is why nobody can explain to you why you feel bad during pregnancy. All the toxins you've stored up in your liver are starting to leak into your blood, and that's why you feel terrible. I've been over the paper before where they say subclinical cholestasis. So they mean leaky bile, toxic leaky bile, lower than they can figure out, lower than they can find, or that they'll call disease, is now considered normal in pregnancy. This is how sick everybody's getting. It's normal. So anyway, when mothers have too much toxic bile leaking into their blood, what happens to their babies? Bile acids are detectable in the bronchoalveolar lavage fluid. That's basically they're taking fluid out of the lungs, okay? So in the lung fluid of newborns from intrahepatic cholestasis of pregnancy of their mother affected by respiratory distress syndrome. Hey, do you know that they used to call the COOF acute respiratory distress syndrome? And here I am telling you that the COOF is a toxic bile leak into your blood, and you're leaking tons of toxic vitamin A into your blood, which Mawson showed in his research papers. Elevated serum bile acid levels in these infants. They're not even born yet. They're full of bile from their own mother. Allow us to hypothesize that bile acid reaches the lung after an uptake from the circulation. These findings strongly support a role for bile acid in causing bile acid pneumonia. So here, let me see if this link comes through the way I want it to. Nope, it's a Twitter link. So anyway, you can come into this thread and get these links. So now let's just connect bile a couple more times to pneumonia. Total bile acids on admission were significantly higher in ICU patients compared to controls. Total bile acids were 3 times higher in sepsis than cardiogenic shock patients. And I'm going to read the sentence a little differently so you catch this. Total bile acids were 6 times higher than in surgical patients and controls, as shown in Table 2. That's a lot more bile acids in these really, really sick people. Hyperbilirubinemia, serum bilirubin greater than or equal to 2 milligrams within 48 hours of admission, was observed more often in patients with septic shock. Now, we're going to connect this in a second. Compared to cardiogenic shock and patients after surgery. So now, we connected the bile acids in the blood to sepsis right here. Too much bile in the blood was seen more commonly in sepsis. So now we connect sepsis to pneumonia. The most common causes of sepsis were pneumonia, almost half. Okay, they've got it wrong. They've got the cause and the effect wrong. It's the bile in the blood that is causing the pneumonia. It's not the pneumonia causing the bile in the blood. That doesn't make any sense. How do the lungs cause the liver to leak bile? It's the liver leaking bile that causes the pneumonia, as you just saw in the study on the newborns, where the bile in the blood from the mother was causing pneumonia in the newborn. Okay? They're close. They just can't, they won't. Nobody wants to talk about toxic bile theory in the mainstream. So now let's just, hey, many of you have heard of TUDCA, the supplement. Well, there's also the pharmaceutical medication UDCA, which is a secondary bile acid. TUDCA is a secondary bile acid. UDCA is a secondary bile acid. They give UDCA as a pharmaceutical. They're giving bile to people. Let me tell you something. A bile problem, a leaky bile problem, has never been fixed by giving more bile. Okay? Gosh, what happens when you give people bile acids? I've been over this paper before. Unanticipated UDCA toxicity includes pneumonia, immune suppression, death. And they're giving this for cirrhosis. Okay. Now, 2 of the toxins I talk about commonly is toxic vitamin A and toxic copper. Okay. Both vitamin A and copper deplete zinc. So what if we found, what if we look for copper and zinc in pneumonia? In middle-aged and older Finnish men, increased serum copper to zinc ratio, too much copper to not enough zinc, and copper concentrations are each linearly associated with an increased risk of incident pneumonia. Too much copper, not enough zinc. Weird pattern to find again and again and again. Now, what happens when they give people the quote-unquote active form of vitamin A called retinoic acid? They give it to people as chemotherapy. They give people active vitamin A, what they call active vitamin A. It's active because it's a toxin. Like mercury's active too. It's a poison. So is vitamin A. It's active. Some of the most damaging drugs out there are retinoic acids, okay? So what happens when they give retinoic acid as chemotherapy to people? Do we ever see, I don't know, pneumonia? Here we go. Formerly referred to as retinoic acid syndrome. Wow, what a name. They changed the name. Why would they change the name away from retinoic acid syndrome? It seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Formerly referred to as retinoic acid syndrome, differentiation syndrome is a common and potentially life-threatening complication seen in patients with APML. That's a form of leukemia. Treated with ATRA, all-trans retinoic acid, aka active vitamin A, aka tretinoin. So if you're putting this poison on your face, you should stop. You are absorbing it into your bloodstream. Huge study on U.S. veterans where they gave it to them to put on their face to prevent skin cancer. They had to stop the study because too many of these vets, they already screened out for guys who were going to die early. They screened out people who they thought were going to die early. Too many of the vets that they kept in the study started dying. Chemotherapy will kill you eventually if you do enough of it. That's what it does. Anyway, so what the other thing they like to give with retinoic acid, they like to give arsenic trioxide, ATO. So they're giving, birds of a feather like to flock together, right? So they're going to give you active vitamin A and arsenic together to try to save your life, I guess. Anyway, the clinical features of differentiation syndrome, which is really retinoic acid syndrome, are also observed with other complications. For example, sepsis. We just talked about that, no? Pulmonary hemorrhage, bleeding in the lungs, pneumonia. And then let's just hit on Mawson's paper again about what's actually going on in the coof and what's causing all the problems, especially the lung problems from stuff in the blood. We propose that SARS-CoV-2 virus-induced, so I didn't highlight that part for a reason. Liver damage causes retinoic acid and stored retinyl esters to be released into the circulation in toxic concentrations unbound to protein with resulting damage to organs including the lungs, heart, blood vessels, and skin. Several lines of evidence support this model of disease causation. So now, the last thing would be, what is the trigger of this massive bile dump that we call pneumonia, that we call the coof. Okay. I still absolutely think it could be EMF and the 5Gs. So if you want, there's a YouTube video of mine. I think it's 103. Is it really 20 videos ago? I think it's the EMF video. How to protect yourself from EMF, but in there I also go over very, very interesting things about, I don't know, retinoic acid and EMFs and copper and EMFs and iron and EMFs and bile and EMFs and lots of stuff like that. So there's that. Now, I wanted to go over the little thing about if you ever turned orange, like those Chinese folks were turning orange. This is just a little paper, hypercarotenoidemia or dermia, hypercarotenodermia. There we go. In Zambia, which children turned orange during mango season? The ones that they basically show in this paper, they turned orange. Listen to how much they're poisoning these people. This perspective describes a cohort of rural Zambian children who have adequate diets in vitamin A, mostly as provitamin A carotenoids, who were given high-dose vitamin A supplements till the age of 5 years, who have access to vitamin A fortified sugar, and whose mothers had access to vitamin A fortified sugar throughout pregnancy and lactation. Many of these children turned orange during mango season, and this phenomenon occurred at estimated liver reserve concentrations of greater than 1 micromole retinol equivalents per gram of liver. They turned orange when they hit vitamin A toxicity in their liver. Just remember this anytime anybody goes, oh, the conversion of beta carotene to retinol is not happening fast enough. No, it's your body wants to store the carotenoids in your skin and your subcutaneous fat because your liver is already full. And I'm going to show you that in the next paper, I believe. This, Joe, the one I just put up. Okay, cool. It's working. Okay. Now, so people like to claim that your body only converts the carotenoids that it needs. Okay. So if your body was slow in converting carotenoids into retinoids, which is if people actually think that this is necessary, which carotenoids are not essential for health at all. They're not essential at all. I've been over that before. Let me find it. This was a big paper. Genetic variations associated with vitamin A status and vitamin A bioavailability. Okay. So they're talking about the same study here. But I want you to pay attention here. A study in Zambian children with hypervitaminosis A, vitamin A toxicity, diagnosable, supports this regulation. Indeed, these children had high serum carotenoid concentrations, and many of them experienced hypercarotenodermia during mango season, a period of high carotenoid intake. This might indicate that pro-vitamin A carotenoid conversion, they're talking about beta carotene being chopped up to make retinoids. Pro-vitamin A carotenoid conversion to vitamin A by BCO1 was more inhibited by the hypervitaminosis A, the vitamin A toxicity already in their liver, than their absorption via SRBI. This is not surprising, as pro-vitamin A carotenoids absorption involves not only SRBI, but also CD36, which is not assumed to be regular. This is all just extra stuff. Don't worry about it. Finally, it is important to state that there is no study dedicated to assess whether vitamin A status also modulates the absorption efficiency of preformed vitamin A. Wow, missing research. Imagine that in the vitamin A world. We're missing research. We don't know, but we're going to make statements. They just said, doesn't this make more sense? The body slows down its conversion of carotenoids into retinoids when it's already toxic with retinoids in the liver. Your body is protecting itself. That's what it's doing. It's shoving the other carotenoids to the skin and the subcutaneous fat because the liver can't take it. It's out of room. Now, next. This is my big thread on vitamin A deficiency doesn't exist. We're going to be referring to this multiple times. I'm not going to start going through it here. I mean, I'm going to go through it, just I'm going to start at different points. But you should really read this thread. If you think that vitamin A is still necessary, I absolutely destroy that notion in this thread with research, with observations of people like newborns with 0 vitamin A in them. They're perfectly healthy. And then they did studies where they restricted vitamin A, or they found people with really low vitamin A and they're like, there's no problems in them. So the first thing we're going to hit, all these places where they try to claim that vitamin A deficiency is happening, it's always third world countries where they don't consume much red meat. The two that we're going to hit on today is mainly going to be Africa. Funny that mango season paper happened in Africa. And China. Okay. So just as another note, like on the vitamin A toxicity epidemic one, which is this link right here, they've been finding vitamin A toxicity, gold standard diagnosable vitamin A toxicity. They stopped testing it. They stopped doing studies on Africans, but in the 1960s, there's 2 studies showing absolute vitamin A toxicity in the livers of Africans in I think it was the 50s and 60s. Yeah, go through the toxicity epidemic thread to see the gold standard liver biopsy studies that have been coming out for 70 years. And they're still worried about vitamin A deficiency so they're worried about vitamin A deficiency in Africa, but back in the 60s, they looked at their livers and they were overflowing with vitamin A. And I just showed you research saying that serum retinol could go down in the most toxic people. Are you seeing how they either don't want to do the research that they need to do, or they're hiding something, or they're trying to mislead? So now, moving on. Okay, so this is from that the deficiency doesn't exist thread. So I'll put this one here. So as I stated at the very top there, what is the main difference between well-nourished and malnourished people? It's muscle meat. Generally, if somebody's getting muscle meat, you can be pretty sure they're getting decently nourished. If people start eating only plant foods and get no muscle meat, malnourishment sets in. They call it protein energy malnutrition. So what is in meat that is so important? Enough really valuable, really bioavailable protein, zinc, and taurine. Taurine is basically, for anybody who tells you different on the internet, taurine is only really found in muscle meat, and red meat is something if I recall correctly, red meat has like 10 times as much as chicken. Okay. So as we go through this article, so let me just go down here. So you need retinol-binding protein to protect you from vitamin A toxicity. Okay. Keyword there. Retinol, vitamin A, binding protein. This is to protect you against vitamin A. It's not to deliver vitamin A to your tissues. It's to protect you because free retinol floating around by itself in your blood is super toxic. Okay. Just look here. They talk about Hypervitaminosis A, vitamin A toxicity, occurs when the amount of plasma retinol, free retinol, exceeds the availability of retinol binding protein to bind it. So if you don't have enough protein, you don't make retinol binding protein. If you don't have enough retinol binding protein, you can't bind the retinol. Then the retinol, free retinol, is one definition of vitamin A toxicity, too much of it, okay? Leading to unbound and elevated levels of free retinol in plasma and formation of excess retinoid metabolites. Okay, so that's bad. Now, this is just a quick paper here. Basically, they're saying that retinol binding protein and retinol tend to move up and down together in the blood. Why? Because your body's trying to protect you against it. Your body's chasing around this free retinol. Because if it lets it go free, you're in trouble. Okay, let's just again show that serum retinol is hot garbage by itself. Serum retinol concentrations do not reflect hepatic or liver vitamin A concentrations over a wide range of liver values. Thus, serum retinol, blood vitamin A concentrations vary little despite major alterations in vitamin A intake. Case reports of hypervitaminosis A, which they diagnosed by history and symptoms, like let's say somebody's eating too much liver, or somebody's taking vitamin A supplements, often show serum retinol concentrations within normal limits, indicating that serum retinol is not a valid measure of vitamin A status during toxicity. And as I added here, you can have a toxic liver with normal blood values. Okay, so we're going to keep connecting here. So if retinol is fairly equal to retinol binding protein, blood vitamin A or retinol binding protein are not therefore equal to the liver's amount of vitamin A. We then start connecting protein deficiency in the diet to supposed vitamin A deficiency symptoms. Oh, I don't know, like pneumonia maybe. And then we're going to connect protein deficiency to decreased retinol binding protein. And we're going to do the same thing with zinc. Okay. I think, let me see, I want to get past, okay. Well, so some of the things that they've connected protein deficiency to, let's just hit this real quick. Supposed vitamin A deficiency symptoms. There's only two main symptoms that they link to supposed vitamin A deficiency. These are the supposedly classic symptoms of vitamin A deficiency. It's xerophthalmia, basically dry eye, and night blindness. Okay. Oh, and skin diseases, right? Protein deficiency and night blindness. Let's just hit this real quick. Our results showed that night blindness was associated with protein energy malnutrition when using the mid-upper arm circumference as a measure of nutritional status. Okay. Now, can we connect protein to retinol binding protein, which is important? Like retinol binding protein may not accurately identify true vitamin A status under all conditions because acute phase response and protein malnutrition depress retinol binding concentrations. Okay. So we've now connected protein energy malnutrition to vitamin A toxicity. Now let's connect it to, and so vitamin A toxicity, you can't protect yourself via retinol binding protein. And actually what happens under protein malnutrition is you cannot get rid of the vitamin A out of your liver, so it stays stuck. So do you see how this can happen? The vitamin A stays stuck in your liver because you can't make the retinol binding protein to take it out. So you have lower levels of retinol binding protein in the blood, which means lower levels of retinol in the blood, which means they diagnose you with vitamin A deficiency, even though your liver is becoming more toxic. I know this is difficult. This is why I take so much time on these live streams to explain this. So let's just connect China with protein malnutrition. Okay. because this is where this thing is happening the most. But they also probably, they had a little more encouragement to get the pokies, did they not? So let me find the other, oh wait, where's my, there it is. The main population groups with protein energy malnutrition and dietary iron deficiency were adults over the age of 70 and children under the age of 5. What did I tell you about vitamin A toxicity? It was really happening a lot in the children, and then as it goes up as we age. Wow, the older people had more vitamin A toxicity and the youngest people had more vitamin A toxicity. Who has the smallest liver that's the easiest to fill up with vitamin A? The smallest children. Who has had the longest time to accumulate toxic vitamin A in their liver? The oldest people. The latter group, wait. So remember, adults and children. So what are they about to say? They're about to just say the same thing. The latter group also had a greater burden of vitamin A deficiency. Do you understand how I just explained how that's going to happen and how they misinterpret this? I can't say. Zhejiang, Beijing, and Guangdong reported the highest age-standardized incidence rates of nutritional deficiencies, which would have been zinc and protein, which mainly pertain to protein energy malnutrition and vitamin A deficiency. So weird that those came up together, is it not? Moving on, impact of protein energy malnutrition on outcomes of adults with viral pneumonia, a nationwide retrospective analysis. PEM means protein energy malnutrition. Patients with protein energy malnutrition had over 2 times higher adjusted odds of inpatient mortality, dying in the hospital, compared to patients without protein energy malnutrition. In conclusion, coexisting PEM is associated with a higher rate of in-hospital morbidity and mortality in patients with viral community-acquired pneumonia, CAP. Okay, so we got viral pneumonia here. Viruses. Next one. Protein energy malnutrition increases mortality, that's death, in patients hospitalized with bacterial pneumonia. A retrospective nationwide database analysis. This study concluded that PEM, protein energy malnutrition, was an independent mortality predictor for those with bacterial pneumonia, with an increased risk of systemic complications as well as increased healthcare utilization costs. Oh, Ben, the mRNA question about the shots, I don't even think that's what was in it. I haven't done my whole big thread on retinoic acid potentially being a secret ingredient in it. So let's just keep going. Let's just keep hammering this home. Effective nutritional. So here's one of the things we try to do, right? So I like to show. So we show that there's like protein energy malnutrition in China, right? And then we show multiple studies showing that when people have protein energy malnutrition, the pneumonia is worse. And then what happens when they give them more protein? Do they get better? This is how we can demonstrate that, let's say, a supplement or let's say more protein, we see the deficiency. Does correcting the deficiency improve the situation? So we associate the deficiency with symptoms. We correct the deficiency. Does that improve the symptoms? Seems straightforward, right? Some people want it to be like spoon-fed to them on a silver plate before they're going to believe it. Those people, I'm sorry, you're going to get sick because no one other than me is going to do this for you. I didn't give you this link. Man. Okay. What are they trying to do here? To investigate the effects of an individualized nutritional intervention program on nutritional status and readmission rate in older adults with pneumonia during hospitalization in 3 and 6 months after discharge. 82 malnourished older adults with a primary diagnosis of pneumonia participated. So, I don't know if I should have highlighted that first part. At 3 and 6 months after discharge, the nutrition intervention group, the more protein group, showed significantly higher daily calorie intake and MNASF scores. I don't know what that test is. Then did the SC group is probably control. Let me just double check. Standard care. They got the normal hospital food, right? After adjusting for sex, the readmission rate for pneumonia significantly decreased by 77% in the nutritional intervention group compared with that in the standard, whatever it was, standard care group. A 6-month nutritional intervention program under dietitian and patient family nutritional support for malnourished older adults with pneumonia can significantly improve their nutritional status and reduce the readmission rate. Guess we kind of nailed that one shut, didn't we? Now, meat, especially red meat, equals protein. Let's go into the biggest source of dietary zinc, and the best zinc possible is in meat, particularly red meat. I believe red meat was about 10 times higher than chicken in terms of zinc. So what about pneumonia and zinc? And pneumonia and retinol-binding protein, zinc and retinol-binding protein and all that stuff. Okay. So back to my thread. So is zinc deficiency connected to retinol-binding protein deficiency also? Number 1, zinc deficiency interferes with the synthesis of retinol-binding protein by the liver and probably with the synthesization of some other plasma proteins as well. Let's do another one. Experimental group of rats received a zinc-deficient liquid diet. Liver cellular retinol-binding protein was decreased by over 50% in the experimental group as compared to each of the 3 control groups. Oh, while we're here, let's talk about night blindness and supposed vitamin A deficiency. But could zinc deficiency cause... Here's what I'm trying to show you. Protein deficiency and zinc deficiency can cause every single symptom that they associate with vitamin A deficiency. It's a red meat deficiency. And what do they want to take away from you? Are you catching on yet? Okay, zinc and night blindness. Symptoms resulting from zinc deficiency are as diverse as the enzyme with which the metal is associated. There's at least 200 enzymes in the body that rely on zinc to run. If chronic, severe, and untreated, zinc deficiency can be fatal. Less drastic symptoms include night blindness. Zinc and skin issues. So I pulled up all of these. Basically, I took a couple papers and I took out the symptoms associated with zinc deficiency in the skin. Acne, hair loss, atopic dermatitis, that's basically eczema, dandruff, delayed healing, dermatitis on hands, feet, face, and or anogenital region. If you want to call it your taint or the grundle, whatever you want to call it, or a diaper rash. Zinc oxide is a common ingredient in diaper rash creams. Oh, it didn't hold my spot. Anyway. Oh, so can protein and zinc, let's just hit this real quick. Can protein and zinc, because they help you make retinol-binding protein, raise your vitamin A levels in your blood? They're not vitamin A. But can they raise it in your blood? This should be interesting, right? So if they're going to a place where they're saying there's low blood vitamin A, but we already established that you could have a totally toxic vitamin A liver with a lack of protein and a lack of zinc, and the blood vitamin A doesn't correlate to the liver vitamin A at all. What if we can then show that the supposed vitamin A deficiency goes up with more protein and more zinc. Okay. So fixing protein deficiency, does that change vitamin A levels? Plasma vitamin A, retinol binding protein, and pre-albumin concentrations. Albumin also carries vitamin A in the blood. Have been studied in 38 northern Thai children with protein calorie malnutrition. The 4-week study period consisted of 1 week of stabilization followed by 3 weeks of treatment with formula diets varying in their protein and calorie content. The stabilization period comprised 7 days of initial treatment with fluid, antibiotics, and a gradually increasing intake of protein and calories to a final level of 1 gram protein and 100 kilocalories per kilogram of body weight. During this period, vitamin A, retinol binding protein, and pre-albumin levels all showed significant increases compared to admission values. Can we confirm this? Here we go. Plasma retinol binding protein is decreased to 31.1% of normal in acute stage of kwashiorkor, which is protein calorie malnutrition. Saying it's a different word for the same thing. So retinol binding protein doubled its plasma level after 1 week and tripled after 2 weeks of appropriate refeeding. They're diagnosing vitamin A deficiency because these children and adults are not getting enough protein or enough zinc. Let's keep going. Here, there was this gentleman. I want you to see, this is like the best example of low blood vitamin A in a protein deficient state, that when they fix the diet and they take the vitamin A out of his diet, you see the toxicity show up. This is really, pay attention here. A 62-year-old white male presented with edema, protein malnutrition, which also means zinc deficiency, and abnormal liver function. He had ingested from 40,000 to 50,000 IUs of vitamin A per day for 7 years. That's just supplements. That has nothing to do with what he actually ate, because usually people who are supplementing vitamin A are also eating a crap ton of it. So let's keep going. Examination of liver tissue by light and electron microscopy revealed findings characteristic of an excessive accumulation of vitamin A. Liver tissue containing massive amounts of vitamin A. However, both the serum concentration of vitamin A and retinol binding protein were below normal. The dude's history says he's toxic. His liver says he's toxic. They actually did, this guy was so sick, they did a liver biopsy on him to check it out to see if they had vitamin A toxicity in his liver. And he had vitamin A deficiency. Have you caught how the science of vitamin A deficiency is absolute, complete dog crap? Let's continue. And serum retinol binding protein was not saturated. Do you know what that means? That means you have retinol binding protein floating around. It lost its retinol. The retinol is off floating away in the blood, causing damage. On a normal diet, whatever that means, more protein, more meat. On a normal diet, the patient was able to mobilize hepatic liver vitamin A, as indicated 71 days later by a repeat biopsy of the liver, which then contained 9,000 units of vitamin A. So he went from 19,700 to 9,000. This is still super toxic. Okay. But he got rid of half of it. He needed protein and zinc. Okay. During this time, his nutrition improved. Serum vitamin A went up. And serum retinol binding protein became transiently saturated. So now his retinol binding protein is holding on to the vitamin A, protecting him. But he's able to mobilize it out of the liver. Because before he had a super toxic liver and no very little, deficient, low vitamin A in his blood and low retinol binding protein. To clarify, this sick man was taking 40 to 50,000 units of vitamin A a day, a protein-deficient diet. His vitamin A initially was 18 micrograms per deciliter, which the people who don't understand toxicity call it deficient. Pay attention to this. The doctors had him stop taking vitamin A supplements. I'm assuming they also had him stop high vitamin A foods. That's a pretty normal thing. If they're like, stop eating sweet potatoes, stop eating dairy. Like I've seen other papers where they do this. They didn't mention doing this, but I'm assuming that they did it. He increased his protein intake. I want you to pay attention here. By week 10, his blood vitamin A, serum retinol, had gone up to 62 micrograms per deciliter. This is right around where LabCorp's got several different values on their vitamin A range. I've seen it anywhere from 57 something to 62 or even 69, but their high end, their toxicity marker of vitamin A, this guy went from deficient, supposedly deficient at 18, all the way to toxic in 10 weeks. Because he finally started getting the vitamin A out of his liver. His blood said he was deficient, which doesn't exist. You get him some real food, you see how much vitamin A comes out of his liver. This is why I test vitamin A in people. Do I put much value on that test? No, it's more just to monitor along the way, to see how things are going. People always, they're like, how do I tell how much toxicity I have in my liver? And I say, you could try, if you wanted to take on the risk, getting a liver biopsy. That's the gold standard. I'm not going to do it. And if you do the low vitamin A diet long enough, your vitamin A will go down eventually. This may take several years. What we watch for is better zinc status, making sure you're getting enough protein. Joe, I don't even know what a liver biopsy would cost. They probably wouldn't run one. They've even said in studies that ethics gets in the way of them doing liver biopsies on living people for vitamin A toxicity. Kind of like with tattoo inks. They were like, we have ethical problems studying the toxicity of tattoo inks because it's a what do they call it? A voluntary procedure. So they just avoided studying it because they avoided studying the toxicity of tattoo inks because of ethics. It's almost like they wanted to hide it. So, simplified, low protein diets hide vitamin A toxicity in the liver. China. Do you think they have low protein diets in China? You think communist countries are just giving meat out like everywhere? So does zinc do the same thing? Well, yes, it does. I've had a guy, you just saw that guy 18 to 62 in 10 weeks. I had a guy go from a 25 to 125 in 6 months. This is the highest I've seen to this point. He started out nearly deficient, and then he became the most toxic. And of course, I'm not giving this guy vitamin A. It's coming out of his liver. So let's just see, does zinc raise retinol-binding protein, and does zinc raise vitamin A levels in the blood, even though it's not vitamin A? So where's the only place it came from? It came from your liver. Quote, plasma vitamin A began to increase significantly following zinc treatment. By 5th day, plasma vitamin A concentration increased to within normal range. Adequate food intake, like protein, as well as zinc, appears necessary to totally reverse low plasma vitamin A concentrations in zinc deficiency. It's vitamin A toxicity and zinc deficiency, and you need the zinc to get you out of it. So just a quick review. Protein and zinc deficiency decreases vitamin A in the retinol-binding protein in blood. Vitamin A is getting stuck in the liver. As zinc deficiency is corrected, vitamin A in the blood increases due to the vitamin A being released, aka detoxed from the liver. Now, I'm going to leave taurine. Actually, let me do this. Let me get this link and put it let me just go put this in my taurine section. That's not it. This one. Oh, no, I already got it. Okay, cool. So let's go back. Was this the one? Am I on the wrong one? This is okay. So yeah, so I didn't cover the zinc and pneumonia. Let's do the zinc and pneumonia real quick. I won't do this too long. So is zinc deficiency a problem? Well, let's just look at the title of this paper. The enormity of the zinc deficiency problem and available solutions, an overview. Oh gosh, you could just supplement some zinc or maybe feed the cows some zinc. An estimated 17% of the world population, or around 1.1 billion people, are at the risk of zinc deficiency. It's way higher than that, folks. The serum zinc levels that they go by are atrocious. So that means that tons of people are deficient. I think there is another. Where is it? Oh my gosh. Show it to me. Oh, now I got to refresh it. Let me see if it's showing up. Oh, it's not. Oh my gosh. Let me find this word. Nope. Let's get rid of this. Sorry about that. There it is. Okay. Awareness programs in areas suffering the most from zinc deficiency are required. Despite the suggestions from the FAO and WHO, global efforts to combat zinc deficiency matching those for combating diseases like HIV are not in place. 17% of the world population is estimated to have zinc deficiency, but they give more attention to a viral disease, if you believe in those. Coordinated efforts of the international community, especially policymakers, agricultural scientists, dietitians, physicians, and others, are required to address the issue of hidden hunger. Well, I'm doing my best. Now, is there zinc deficiency in China? Studies on the zinc nutritional status and risk factors of Chinese 6 to 18-year-old children. Zinc is an essential micronutrient that is involved in several metabolic processes, especially children's growth and development. Although many previous studies have evaluated the zinc's nutritional status of children, there are very few reports on children aged 6 to 18 years old. Wow, they're not studying the children for this. Weird. Furthermore, there are few reports on children's zinc nutrition status based on the Chinese population. They particularly don't have studies on the Chinese population where they don't eat meat. And they would hate to admit that they have problems. It's not good for the state to admit they have problems. Communists always talk about their problems, right? They always admit their problems, don't they? According to WHO data, the prevalence of zinc deficiency in Asian countries is rather high and has resulted in high child mortality, aka death rates. I think that's all I'm going to hit on this one. Stunting and zinc deficiency among primary school children in rural areas with low soil zinc concentrations in Jiangsu province, China. So what are they looking at? Stunting and zinc deficiency among primary school children in the north rural area of Jiangsu province with low soil zinc concentrations, eastern part of China. Results: the total prevalence of stunting, obvious growth stunting, and mild stunting was 4.7% and 22.8% respectively. So nearly a quarter of these children are not growing as well as they should. And this is what they're associating with just zinc deficiency. Now think about protein deficiency, which we already talked about. And Huai'an had the highest prevalence of stunting, 8.1%. So nearly 10% of the kids are actually straight up growth stunted. Among the three counties, in Huai'an County, the prevalence of zinc deficiency based on serum zinc concentrations, I want you to pay attention here, hair zinc concentration. So based on serum zinc concentration, hair zinc concentration in both. So they did blood zinc, and hair and blood. Gosh, who tests hair and blood zinc? Oh, that's me. So 0.7%. They only found 0.7% of zinc deficiency when they did just blood. Well, gosh, Dr. Smith, why do you run hair tests? Because they found 15.2% and 15.3% when they did hair and blood. Wow, they only missed I don't know, what is that? 15.5% or 14.5%? There's a reason we do both. Because one can miss the other, and I'll tell you, the blood labs, their levels, their normal reference range. Notice how they say reference range, not health range. Reference range means it's a statistical BS thing. That's blood tests, blood ranges. Those of you out there who get a blood test and you come back to me and you're like, and you say something silly like, my blood zinc was normal. And I'm like, oh no. Don't use the word normal with me because I don't use the normal ranges. So here we have 32.3% of subjects were anemic. Gosh, what food maybe do people not eat enough of that would give them zinc and iron and help with anemia? Oh, I don't know, maybe red meat. A third of them were anemic. Boys had a higher prevalence of zinc deficiency than girls. What do boys need to make? Testosterone. Testosterone requires zinc production. Testosterone production requires zinc. So, and then they try to do this excuse at the end. It's not highly prevalent. Oh boy. You got a quarter of your kids getting stunted growth. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. Now, low zinc status, a new risk factor for so let's connect zinc to pneumonia now. Okay. Is this on? What is now? Oh my gosh. Now glass turned off. Joe, there's some weird thing with this. I don't know. Anyway. In addition, recent evidence from the literature is presented demonstrating that low zinc status, commonly reported in the elderly, which also means it's happening in children, impairs immune function, decreases resistance to pathogens, and is associated with increased incidence and duration of pneumonia. Increased use and duration of antimicrobial treatment, so you need more antibiotics. That's not good. And increased overall mortality, aka death, in the elderly. Inadequate stores of zinc might therefore be a risk factor for pneumonia in the elderly. Moving on. Zinc in human health. Oh wait, how many links did I miss, Joe? 37049. Did I get it? There, let me get this one. Sorry. This. Oh yeah, while we're here, don't forget to like and subscribe to the video and make sure to leave a comment. If you're commenting in the chat, that's great. When the video's up, make sure to comment in the below. This is how you help these algos. This is how you help Skynet to promote us to more people. Here, let's go. Zinc in human health and infectious diseases. Nowadays, it is known that the main cause of zinc deficiency is malnutrition. Just remember, whenever you see malnutrition, just think lack of red meat. In particular, vulnerable populations such as the elderly in Western countries and children in developing countries are often affected. However, sufficient zinc intake and homeostasis is essential for a healthy life, as it is known that zinc deficiency is associated with a multitude of immune disorders such as metabolic and chronic diseases, as well as infectious diseases such as respiratory infections, malaria, HIV, or tuberculosis. Another one, efficacy of, so now, okay, so we just associated zinc deficiency with pneumonia. Okay, so does giving zinc help pneumonia? Okay, efficacy of zinc given as an adjunct to the treatment of severe pneumonia. A meta-analysis of randomized, double-blind, and placebo-controlled trials. Got all the magic words there. Conclusion, zinc given as an adjunct to the treatment of severe pneumonia is effective in reducing the mortality death of severe pneumonia. You got to remember, people with severe pneumonia are probably severely zinc deficient. So you're not going to fix it all while they're in the hospital, and especially if they're giving them like crappy zinc sulfate garbage. So more zinc supplementation for pediatric pneumonia. I'm going to read this first part of the abstract. Question: among young children suffering from pneumonia, zinc deficiency has been documented in many countries. Is supplementation with zinc effective in the treatment and prevention of childhood pneumonia? Answer: several studies reported that zinc supplementation for more than 3 months was effective for preventing pneumonia in children younger than 5 years of age. What do you need zinc to do again? Oh, detox vitamin A, protect you from vitamin A? Huh, weird. A randomized controlled trial of zinc as adjuvant therapy for severe pneumonia in young children. Adjunct treatment with zinc reduced the time to the cessation or the ending of severe pneumonia. Okay. Let's see. Let's do one more. Dietaries. So they talk about mycoplasma pneumonia as the white lung syndrome. We're going to talk about streptococcus pneumonia here. Dietary zinc in the control of streptococcus pneumonia infection. So mycoplasma pneumonia is a bacterial pneumonia, is what they're suggesting white lung syndrome might be. Streptococcus pneumonia is a major cause of bacterial pneumonia, which is prevalent in regions of zinc deficiency. We report that dietary zinc levels dictate the outcome of strep S pneumonia infection in a murine model, that's mouse. Dietary zinc restriction impacts mouse tissue zinc levels with distribution post-infection altered and S pneumonia virulence and infection enhanced. So it's more infectious. There's more problems if they give a zinc deficiency. Dietary zinc deficiency increases sensitivity to streptococcus pneumoniae infection. Okay, so connected protein, connected zinc, doing all the connections. And let's do taurine now. So one of the things, so when they try to do vitamin A deficiency animal studies, what they like to give the animals is they give them casein protein, dairy protein. And the earliest vitamin A studies weren't even done where they realized that zinc was important for mice and rats. So they didn't give the mice and rats enough zinc in their supposed vitamin A is a vitamin and these symptoms are vitamin A deficiency studies. So they were not giving them zinc because there's like no zinc in casein protein. Casein, however you want to say it. Then they say that they made the casein vitamin A free. If you've seen my thread on the perfect storm of vitamin A toxicity that is dairy products, dairy has vitamin A in the fat, in the casein, and in the whey. It's in the research. Okay. So there's vitamin A in casein. What do they do to try to treat the casein to make it vitamin A free? They treat it with, I believe they heat it, and they treat it with alcohol, ethanol. And then they test it afterwards and find no retinol in it or retinol esters. Heating oxidizes vitamin A, which moves it along the detox pathway. So if you had retinol and you oxidize it, you could oxidize it into retinaldehyde, which they didn't measure, or retinoic acid, which they didn't measure. So they probably just changed the form of the vitamin A into retinaldehyde or retinoic acid. They didn't measure it. The funny thing about the casein that they use, I've looked at this on research sites where they give the diets for lab animals. The casein, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, but if you buy casein powder, like normal casein powder, it's pretty white. That doesn't mean it has no vitamin A in it. But the treated casein, the vitamin A free casein, has a yellowish tint to it. So it went from white to yellow as they oxidized the vitamin A. It's still vitamin A in there. So now I want you to understand the vitamin A deficiency studies. They were giving these animals more toxic vitamin A in the form of either retinaldehyde or retinoic acid. They were giving them no zinc, and they were giving them no taurine. And then they saw symptoms. And they said, well, this must be vitamin A deficiency. No, it's vitamin A toxicity. And all of science has been based on that specific lie. All of nutritional science about vitamin A is what I mean. So now, let's go into taurine. Okay? The only place you're going to get taurine is meat. And like I said, red meat's probably about 10 times higher than poultry is. Okay? I talked about the dairy protein. So can a lack of taurine cause symptoms that show up as vitamin A deficiency, supposedly? It is now firmly established that a decreased intake of a decrease of taurine retinol levels. So I'm sorry, retinol. They mean the amount of taurine in the retina. That's what they're saying here. They don't mean retinaldehyde, for those of you who are up on the wording and how they try to confuse us. They mean retinol, amounts of taurine in the retina. That's what they're referring to, okay? It is now firmly established that a decrease of taurine retinol levels beyond a critical point results in a retinal degeneration characterized by an alteration in structural and functional integrity of photoreceptors and other retinal cells. What are photoreceptors? They're your light receptors in your eye. Gosh, do you think if there was a problem with light receptors in your eye, you might get night blindness? Isn't that one of the biggest supposed things that vitamin A deficiency causes? So, taurine. Is taurine connected to the other vitamin A deficiency symptom of dry eye? Dry eye was induced by atropine sulfate, and topical treatment was carried out with 0.4% sodium hyaluronate plus 0.5% taurine. Taurine prevents ocular surface damage, basically dry eye damage. Does taurine help the skin issues that vitamin A deficiency is often thought to be associated with? Taurine occurs naturally in food, especially in meat. Taurine is used in topical anti-acne therapy. It was used to explore anti-tumor promoting activity in a skin carcinogenesis. It is used in skin ulcers. It exerts an anti-wrinkle effect on the skin. Taurine is effective in treating the underlying causes of psoriasis. I've shown how I did a whole live stream on psoriasis and vitamin A toxicity. It is also used in atopic eczema. And I have a link here to my thread on my own psoriasis and how I fixed that. Wow, does taurine protect your cells against vitamin A toxicity? The presence of taurine and zinc, whoa, protected cells from retinol-induced injury. Wow. Let's do another one. Symptoms of vitamin A toxicity in rats included hepatotoxicity, as in liver damage, and nephrotoxicity, as in kidney damage. That's the bile damaging your liver and the bile going in your blood damaging your kidneys. These toxic effects of vitamin A were significantly decreased when rats were fed the diet with taurine, not just casein that's toxic in vitamin A and has no taurine. So let's just see, does taurine theoretically help with pneumonia too? Taurine mitigates the development of pulmonary lung inflammation, oxidative stress, and histopathological alterations in a rat model of bile duct ligation. Those of you who don't know what bile duct ligation is, that's where they tie off the common bile duct and they give these animals cholestasis, liver injury, toxic, leaky bile. They're giving these rats toxic, leaky bile, and then they're giving them taurine, and they're seeing less lung inflammation. Are you connecting it all yet? Lung injury is a significant complication associated with cholestasis/cirrhosis, toxic, leaky bile, and liver damage. This problem significantly increases the risk of cirrhosis-related morbidity and mortality, basically death and disease, suffering. It's the liver and the toxic bile that are causing the lung injury. Don't get them confused. Oh, hello, sweetie. My daughter Taryn joined the chat, so if any of you guys want to say hi to her, feel free. So, last sentence here, it was found that taurine significantly blunted inflammation. Inflammation from what? Oh, I don't know. Vitamin A, toxic bile acids, all that stuff. Alleviated oxidative stress and mitigated lung histopathological changes in bile duct ligated animals. These data suggest taurine as a potential protective agent against cholestasis cirrhosis-related lung injury. Okay, that's cool. Taurine seems to protect against lung problems. Now, these are not taurine, like the taurine you can buy over the counter. We're talking about, they're doing these chloramine, binding chloramine, known toxic chlorine compound to taurine. Did it still help? Examination of taurine, chloramine, and taurine on, need the links, sorry. The whole show is just Joe sending me messages saying, put the link up, put the link up. Examination of taurine, chloramine, and taurine on LPS, endotoxin, induced acute pulmonary inflammatory in mice. Obviously, probably not native English speakers we're looking at here. Okay. LPS, endotoxin. For those of you who used to be like Peters and the obsession with endotoxin it comes about because of E. coli. It leaks into your bloodstream. But what they can do in animal studies is they will inject endotoxin into the blood, or they will even put it into their lungs straight. Like they'll shove it down their trachea to poison the lungs. Endotoxin is a toxic bile problem. The toxic bile eats the holes in your gut, causes you leaky gut, and then the endotoxin goes through the leaky gut. So when you see endotoxin problems, you should also think toxic leaky bile. In the present study, we evaluated the anti-inflammatory effect of taurine chloramine, a taurine derivative, against LPS-induced pneumonia in mouse. The mice were pre-treated with taurine chloramine intraperitoneally, so they injected it into their taint, into their grundle. Isn't that nice of them? Before intratracheal administration of LPS endotoxins. So they're giving them taurine injected, and then they're shoving endotoxin into their lungs. What'd they find? These findings suggest that taurine chloramine treatment partially prevents IL-6 production induced by acute pneumonia in vivo, in actual animals. One more. N-chlorotaurine reduces the lung and systemic inflammation in LPS-induced pneumonia in high-fat diet-induced obese mice. Wait, how did they make the mice obese? Oh, they gave them a high-fat diet. Oh, okay. High-fat diets cause liver injury. That's why they did this. High-fat diets are not natural for humans to eat. They will cause problems eventually. If you're in the honeymoon phase and you think everything's going great because you're snarfing down fat all day, it's going to end when your liver is injured enough. Okay. Let me get this one. Wait, is that the right one? Yeah. Okay, cool. And how do you make them obese too? High fat diet. Okay, folks, what you need to know about American diets, people love to blame, it's all the carbs, it's all the fat. If you look at the intake of Americans, carbs and fat both went up. How do you get fat? Eat lots of carbs and fat together. That's the recipe to get fat. Oh, and make sure to have lots of vitamin A and no zinc. So, in the present study, we evaluated the anti-inflammatory effect of the taurine derivative N-chlorotaurine. This might be the same study. I don't know. Against E. coli-derived LPS-induced pneumonia in obese mice. See, the other study didn't say obese mice. Maintained on a high-fat diet. In this study, taurine or N-chlorotaurine was injected intraperitoneally 1 hour before intratracheal LPS administration. May be the same study. These findings suggest that intraperitoneal N-chlorotaurine attenuates acute pneumonia-related pulmonary and systemic inflammation, including muscle wasting in vivo. So, let me see. Was that the last one? Oh, no, we got one more. For those of you who are in the Love Your Liver program and you haven't visited yet, I'm going to say I have not announced on my social media the new article section written by Kelsey Kenny and myself about nicotinic acid, flush niacin, and how it is actually kind of the anti-vitamin A toxicity nutrient. It is not we do not consider it a B vitamin. It is an amino acid. It is derived from tryptophan. It's got a structure of an amino acid. It's not a B vitamin. It's another faker that you've been lied to about, except this is totally the opposite of vitamin A. So I thought, as I was doing this, I thought, well, let me just go and see if nicotinic acid, niacin, and if you go out and you take nicotinamide or niacinamide or any other NAD booster or nicotinamide riboside or NMN or whatever, that's not what I'm talking about. You're not doing the right thing. You should go and read, before you go and mess yourself up doing something dumb, you should go read the nicotinic acid articles in the Love Your Liver program. So if you have a membership, or if you don't have a membership to the Love Your Liver program, and everything here is making sense to you, and you want to know how do I fix it, $99 a year gets you into the Love Your Liver program at members.nutritiondetective.com. It's my life's work. It'll so much less money than all the other practitioners you've wasted all your money on. It's a do-it-yourself kind of thing. You got 2,000 plus people in there that you can ask questions to in a helpful social media network kind of way. I don't put up with trolling in there. So it's functional. It's helpful. People get help all the time in there. So let's just look at, when I say niacin, I mean nicotinic acid. That's it. Okay? I don't mean niacinamide. I don't mean nicotinamide. So here we go. Niacin attenuates, that means reduces, lung inflammation and improves survival during sepsis. Wait, what did we associate sepsis with before? Oh, toxic bile leaking into the blood. Oh, yeah. By downregulating the nuclear factor, I think is this kappa B pathway. I don't remember my Greek, the letters they use on here. Or is it Latin? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Interventions to induce endotoxemia in rats. Lipopolysaccharide, LPS, aka endotoxin, that leaks in via the same holes that the toxic bile eats in your leaky gut. At a dosage of 10 milligrams per kilogram, was injected into a tail vein. Wow, how hard are those to find? Right? They may be right on the surface, but they got to be small. And 10 minutes later, vehicle, a low dose of niacin, 360 milligrams per kilogram, or a high dose of niacin, 1,180 milligrams per kilogram, was administered once through an orogastric tube, respectively. I want you to understand those doses. I'm not going to do the equivalent. I understand that animal doses are different than human doses, but I'm just going to say, like, I'm going to pick an easy number here. Let's say you have a 90 kilogram human male. I'm about 90 kilos. Well, I'm over 90 kilos, but I'm doing 90 because it's easy math. Did I say I'm over? I'm under 90 kilos. So, but I'm just doing the 90 because it's a nice round number. That's why I'm doing it. 90 kilo adult male. So if you take 360 times 90, that's the low dose. They gave, if it was the equivalent of me, this would be like giving me 32 grams of niacin. That's the low dose. They just shoved down these rats' throats. Okay? So now look at that high dose. Let's see, 90 times 1180. The high dose for me would be 106,200 milligrams. 1,062 grams, I believe. Or is that 106 grams? Sorry, 106 grams. 106 grams. Wow. If they're going to give, are they going to kill these mice? Conclusions: high dose of niacin attenuated reduced lung inflammation, reduced histologic lung damages, and improved survival during sepsis in rats. Gosh, they were septic. No, that was oral, Zendog. That was oral niacin. So the liver's in trouble when they're in sepsis. And they gave these rats like 106 grams worth. If you were talking about human equivalent, like, and again, it's a rough thing. I'm just doing this because I don't have the time to convert it all fancy style. But like if I took 106 grams of niacin, it wasn't poisoning them, even though they're already in like a liver toxic state. They're in sepsis. Oh, need the URL. Got it. So when people go out and look at some of the propaganda, nicotinic acid is dangerous and bad for your liver studies, and they just so happen to ignore that these people were on like 8 medications at the same time, definitely the niacin. No. We have articles covering all of this nonsense in the Love Your Liver program. So, network, let's just say, I don't know, let's say there was a disease, a novel pathogen that was causing pneumonia in people. What does niacin do then? Network pharmacology and bioinformatics analyses identify intersection genes of niacin and COVID-19 as potential therapeutic targets. Here we go. Further, we disclose the targets, biological functions, and signaling pathways of niacin in CRC COVID-19. The analysis indicated that niacin could help in treating CRC COVID-19 through cytoprotection, cellular protection, enhancement of immunologic functions, inhibition of inflammatory reactions, and regulation of cellular microenvironment. Let me see. Did they have pneumonia in here? Oh, there it is. I missed it. I'd already highlighted it. This is another reference here. Interestingly, niacin is a potent anti-pneumonia agent that modulates specific genes such as NIAR, NIAX, and PNUC. Yeah. Tillandsia neoides. I don't know how to say that. Anyway, says they call it a novel pathogen because it's fictional. Yeah. So anyway, let's get to some of the, I know it's like 11:52. But so this is what we do here, folks. For those of you who are new to listening to this stuff, what we do is we are redesigning, reorganizing the paradigm of medicine to show, using current research, that you are in control of your chronic disease. You are not technically, are you a victim of it right now? Yeah. Doesn't matter what happened to you in the past. You can always make your liver better by becoming less toxic, by putting less toxins in. You make sure you get the minerals, like I showed you on that zinc study. We do hair and blood to make sure you get the minerals. And then we do include the amino acid, the essential amino acid niacin, that is incorrectly called vitamin B3. We avoid taking in pseudo vitamins that are actually toxins like vitamin A. We don't want that. You don't want to take vitamin D supplements. Those are rat poison. You don't want to take vitamin E. Vitamin E can store up to 20 times more vitamin A in your liver. Vitamin K is a little different animal. It's a totally different chemical structure than the alcohols known as retinol and cholecalciferol or calcitriol. Those are the vitamin Ds, and tocopherol or tocotrienols. We are unwinding the whole nonsense of modern nutrition that was brought to you by the Rockefellers and Merck. Vitamin science was brought to you by the Rockefellers and Merck. And if you want to trust that, I guess you'll get what the end point is of that. We don't do that here. But yeah, if you want to work with me, you can do that through the testing and consultation packages. Just go to nutritiondetective.com. We also have Nathan taking clients too. You can do the DIY Love Your Liver program at members.nutritiondetective.com. And then you can also see our supplements at nutritiondetective.com. We do have several of them. We make them with no additives, as clean as we can get them. Organic sun fiber, Keystone Minerals. Now, I have bad news for people who are listening to this right now. We are actually out of lactoferrin. Not our fault. Supply chain issue, but we are going to get that out as soon as possible. And then we do have something cool coming out very, very, very soon. Don't email Julie about it. You will know. Super exciting. So let me get to the questions. Let me get to the super chats. The Rockefellers love humanity. They love us so much. We're definitely not just cattle to be slaughtered to them. We're definitely not. Definitely not. Do you think the AI will ever understand sarcasm? So let me find. Okay, so Ben asks, would you recommend using vitamin C or other means? As another example would be elderberry to temporarily inhibit the sorry, wait, why is that not moving away? I want that out of there. Sorry, I couldn't. Would you recommend using vitamin C or other means, elderberry, to temporarily inhibit the COVID-19 bile dump to avoid inflammation-induced myocarditis, pericarditis, or other severe symptoms? Sure, that can be polyphenols like elderberry. Elderberry, the reason why elderberry can seem to shut down colds and flus is because it's got tons of polyphenols that slow ALDH, which slows your bile dumping, which reduces your bile leaking for the time being, which then can reduce the symptoms. Vitamin C, ascorbic acid, in high doses inhibits ADH, alcohol dehydrogenase, and ALDH, aldehyde dehydrogenase, just like polyphenols do, more than anything else I've ever seen in the research. Which means if you slow down ALDH, you slow down bile production. And again, what do people take when they're sick? Vitamin C and elderberry. Two different mechanisms of slowing down ALDH, which slows down bile production, which means if you disconnected the water to your house, but if you had a leaky sink and you wanted to stop the leaky sink, like leaky bile, from leaking water onto your counter or down into your cabinets, you can turn off the water to your house, right? So if you have toxic leaky bile, that is what is causing your COOF You can use things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, the azole medications, elderberry, vitamin C, quercetin to slow down your ALDH, slow down your bile production, leak less bile into the system, and reduce your symptoms. Sure, I would make that sort of a last ditch effort if you really needed it for symptoms. Like, and do I think that of all the things to slow down your ALDH, if that was what somebody was doing, vitamin C is probably the least damaging one long term. How do we know this? Well, if you ever look up rebound scurvy, this is the craziest explanation of anything I've ever seen. Rebound scurvy, which I've had, Matt Stone's had it, many of you may have had it, is where you take a high dose of vitamin C for a long time or a significant period of time, and then all of a sudden you stop suddenly, and within like 2 or 3 days, you're getting symptoms of scurvy, like bleeding gums and skin issues and other stuff like that. You're getting symptoms of a vitamin C deficiency, even though you've been taking vitamin C at high doses for weeks to months to years. That makes absolutely zero sense that it's actually a vitamin C deficiency. How about this explanation instead? The vitamin C was shutting down your bile production. When you stopped taking, so you were feeling better. Hey, I know I used to take high dose vitamin C to make my allergies go away. It took 8 grams. It didn't make them go away. It just stopped them while there was either I was taking it or while there was still allergen in the air. Funny thing, allergens tend to be like pollen are what color again? Yellow, orange, vitamin A, anybody? So you slow down the bile dumping. You don't leak the bile. You don't get the symptoms. But then what happens when you stop taking the compound that is slowing down your bile? What does your liver do? It recovers. It starts trying to do what it is designed to do, which is dump bile. And that whole time you've been suppressing the normal bile production and excretion, you haven't been detoxing well. So what does that mean? You're accumulating more toxins in your system. So your bile is becoming more toxic. So then when you stop the vitamin C, you start dumping tons of toxic bile, even more toxic than it used to be. And you get the symptoms of toxic bile through your system, which we call rebound scurvy. We've been over here before. Scurvy, vitamin C deficiency is vitamin A toxicity. So does it make sense that rebound scurvy would come back when you start dumping toxic bile full of vitamin A into your system? Voile. Ergo. So that's so is it if vitamin C would be like, okay, so if I got to the point when I had what we call the coof, my first, I think 5 days of it was mainly just really strong flu symptoms, like the body aches. That was the worst part. Body aches, insomnia, and yeah, I felt warm. Okay. Oh, if you haven't seen, I went over bile and fever on Twitter. Toxic bile in your blood is what causes fever. They actually showed that people who had a bile leak after their surgery got a fever. So, and I had other examples in there too. So could you, what I'm saying is I had like 10 days of this massive bile dump leaking into the system that we called the coof. First 5 days, body aches. I took a little bit of Alka-Seltzer, which is basically aspirin, to help me sleep so I could rest. And I did a lot of magnesium baths. Last 5 days was lots of nausea. Well, what causes nausea? Bile in your stomach. The nausea was pretty bad. I lost about 10 pounds over those 10 days. And then finally I got out of it. I did not try to suppress it. But if somebody was, let's say, much more toxic than me and was not as physically robust as I consider myself to be, and they were really suffering, could they temporarily try to shut down their bile production or slow it down to get out of the woods? Sure. High dose ascorbic acid or high dose sodium ascorbate would be potentially a way to do that. Am I going to do that unless I'm in real up a creek without a paddle? I'm probably not. I'm not going to do it unless I really, really am bad. Could I do it? Would I do it if I needed to? Sure. Am I going to take ivermectin to do it? No way in the heck. So, hope that answers it. Polyphenols, I found elderberry to be really meh. When I used to use it, when I thought it was good, I thought it was kind of like meh. So, let's get into the next one. But yeah, could you temporarily use it? Yes. Nature Sounds asks, hello, what would you suggest for vitiligo, Lyme, C. diff, Epstein-Barr, and leaky gut apart from charcoal and low vitamin A diet? Colonoscopy showed no issues. This is, I don't know how to put this other than this is a lot of toxicity and nutrient deficiencies together. Leaky gut is toxic bile eating holes in your gut, as we just kind of went over today. Viruses are, whatever you want to believe about viruses are evidence of toxicity in the system. I don't want to get in. My simple explanation here, some people will say, well, viruses don't exist and all that stuff. I'm not totally bought in on any of it. Here's how I feel. Virus theory is absolute trash garbage. It doesn't explain anything. The body makes antibodies, right? So you hear about viruses and antibodies. Well, the body makes antibodies as something to bind to a poison to protect you from the poison, kind of like retinol-binding protein. So, and if you know the history, the etymology of the word virus, it means poison. So the very word itself means poison. And the body makes antibodies, which are to bind to poisons. So whatever you think the presentation of viral diseases, whatever you think viruses are, they are with, exosomes. I could show you studies that retinoic acid increases exosome production. So if exosomes, they're like, oh, that's the cell's detox. I'm like, oh, so you mean vitamin A increases the cell's need for detox? Huh. What a coincidence. This is, like we've had people in the Love Your Liver program who have been diagnosed with Lyme or who think they have Lyme, and they've spent tons of money on Lyme literate doctors and gotten nowhere, often gotten worse. And they find much more relief in our program. And I don't ever talk about Lyme. So what is it? Is it toxicities and deficiencies? Or was it that they needed IV antibiotics like once or twice a week? I'm going to say it's toxicities and deficiencies. Vitiligo is, there's problems with you're depositing something toxic in your skin that is affecting your melanin production. That's a tough vitiligo. Once that switch has been triggered, that's a tough one to flip back. That we're still working on. I think maybe there's a possibility that topically applied nicotinic acid may help with that. Kelsey's going to be getting recipes for stuff into the Love Your Liver program soon for like topical approaches and stuff. She gave me a topical spray to make the other day that I'm gonna make today after we're done here. So, but no, charcoal can help. Soluble fibers that you tolerate can help. I talk about the sources of those in the Love Your Liver program. Sun fiber can feed the gut bacteria that you need to process the bile acids to hopefully not make so many secondary bile acids, which will really cause leaky gut. I mean, there's zinc, selenium, molybdenum, magnesium, potassium, nicotinic acid, all these things that there's a lot more than just charcoal and a low vitamin A diet. If you are, and here's the thing I want to just bring up right now is if you are really deficient, let's say you were really deficient in zinc. And let's say this is you're really deficient in zinc, but you don't know it and you're not testing it. Now, going into detox, right? So it's a poison on the way in and it's a poison on the way out. So when you take that, like the studies we were going over with zinc, like you need zinc to get the vitamin A out of your liver in the first place. So if you don't have enough zinc, it just stays in your liver. But then when the zinc, when the vitamin A or the copper comes out, you need zinc to protect you against it. So basically what I'm getting at here is the detox process itself will require you to have more zinc to keep up. You need the zinc to detox in the first place. You need the zinc to protect. This is just one nutrient. This is just one mineral. You need the zinc to protect yourself against the toxins that you are liberating. So if you don't have that, or if you have a really okay, so then wait, so we layer that. So the detox needs more zinc, let's say. And then when we start understanding that the foods today are deficient in minerals, especially the really good minerals that we need, like, zinc. If the food is deficient and detox is going to require even more, and you're already deficient, do you believe that a whole food diet would ever get you enough to do this well? This is one of the issues I have with Grant's dietary approach. It's cool I appreciate Grant more than words can ever describe for treading, for forging the path. But there's been some people who do that diet or other variations of a diet and they have problems along the way. And what do I think it is? It's nutrient deficiency accumulating along the way because the detox uses more. Maybe there's not enough in the food and they already started deficient. And so the combination of it all is worsening the deficiency. How are they ever going to know? Well, we call it test, don't guess, then address. That's what we do. So that's the thing about people who are like Wild Westing it. And they're just like, I'm just going to go and do it. And they want food to do everything. And I'm like, you are trying to fight a man-made toxicity problem with the food that man has screwed up. It's going to be really hard to get out of that without some help. And that's where if we do things like we look at your symptoms, like let's say I can, the general things I would say go along with zinc deficiency, and I harp on zinc a lot, but zinc deficiency symptoms, whenever I hear whenever I hear skin issues, whenever I hear eye issues, whenever I hear hormonally connected issues, I think zinc deficiency. And those are just like the easy ones. Is zinc connected to all sorts of things? Yeah, you just saw today, pneumonia. So we address the whole thing. So you're looking at it, Nature Sounds, as like these individual diagnoses and these diseases. What I'm telling you, what we do different here is we are saying they are all connected via your liver and your toxic bile to toxicities and nutrient deficiencies. And so what do? We have the toxicities that we assume are present, and we start working on those. Best case scenario, we are looking for the nutrient deficiencies, mineral deficiencies, amino acid like niacin deficiencies, and we are going to treat those as well as we can. So we look for the symptoms, then we do the testing. Then with when people work with me or Nathan, they get 6 months of access to the office hours where we can then people could come and talk to me and Nathan and get, if they say, well, this isn't working for me, or is this too much, or am I not on enough, or what should I do next? They get 6 months of access with the package to come and talk to Nathan or I, so we can then course correct along the way. Because it's not just one dose of zinc that everybody takes. Like anybody on the internet who is like, I see people on Twitter. I saw one guy, he's like, everybody should take 100 milligrams of zinc a day. And some of you out there who are sensitive to zinc are like, the reason I made zinc picolinate in a liquid was so people could take 2 milligrams at once, because when you deal with sick people in the real world, too much zinc can kick too much toxicity out of their liver, just like you saw in the papers about zinc increasing vitamin A in the blood. That's what I'm talking about. So zinc can kick vitamin A out of the liver. Zinc can kick copper out of the liver. What if you kick too much out and you don't feel good? Then we do less. What if you need a little help to tell you you should do less? Oh, the last... Here, let me get that link for you, Joe. Sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. That's one of the things. And that, you know, you can, the do-it-yourselfers, there's all the people in the Love Your Liver network where you can bounce questions off them. If you're working with me and Nathan, you get direct access to both of us every week. We each have a session of office hours each week. So that's that. But we do things differently here. We're not... none of those diagnoses necessarily change what I'm going to do. The diagnoses may change which things I talk to a person about emphasizing, like which parts of the program are the most important for you to focus on and not mess that part up so you can get relief the fastest. That's it. But the whole program is generally, the program's the program. It's not a protocol. It's things to work on for each person to see what the sweet spot is for each person. So that's what I got. Okay, Ramon. Oh, sorry. Thank you for the super chat, both of you with the super chats earlier. Ramon says, had an impacted wisdom tooth pulled this morning. Fun. Was prescribed clindamycin to prevent infection. No fan of antibiotics. What are your thoughts? Thank you. Well, I'm just going to rattle off some things that I know. I do know that if you're going to do, if I was going to take antibiotics, I would do several things. One, colloidal silver has been shown to increase the effectiveness of antibiotics. If you're going to take them, might as well make them more effective, right? So I would probably, I mean, considering I have the only time I would use colloidal silver is when I have an issue. I don't take it on a daily basis. I would not recommend taking it on a daily basis. But if I had an issue, I would take it. And if I had to take antibiotics, I'd probably be swishing it as well to put it right on the tooth area. And I'd be taking some orally. That's what I would be doing. Now, then we get into probiotics. If I was going to be taking antibiotics, I would, if you've already started the antibiotics, it's a little late to take probiotics before, but I would take probiotics before I started the antibiotics. I would take probiotics the entire time I was taking the antibiotics, and I would be continuing to take the probiotics for probably at least 2 weeks after the antibiotics were done. Now, which probiotics? I have a huge probiotic section in the Love Your Liver program where it talks about fermentative types versus putrefactive types and lactobacillus versus bifidobacterium. And we even talk about lactospore in there a bit. It depends on the person. But if you just wanted to shotgun it, it'd probably be better to shotgun it than to not take anything. And then I'd just be doing a normal low toxin, high specific mineral diet, maybe looking at those nicotinic acid articles in the Love Your Liver program and doing some of that. That's maybe even swishing some, if you were taking the nicotinic acid in water, I'd be swishing that over the area too. If you were taking lactoferrin, open up a capsule, open up whatever amount you're taking, put it into water, stir it up, swish the heck out of that. Okay. Oh. Helen's saying, great live stream. You look tired, Mr. Smith. You need some rest. I do. I mean, it's funny out here. It's funny that you noticed that. All the internet experts who are like, let's say carnivores who are living in Costa Rica and surfing and eating whatever they want all day. I have 2 kids. I help take care of my lovely mother who has Parkinson's-like syndrome. I have this full business. I have my own hobbies of lifting and shooting. I did shoot in a gun competition this weekend. That was a lot of fun. And so I have quite a few. And I'm trying to have a dating life too. So yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, but my energy is still good. I may look a little tired. I do what I can. So, but I would say thank you for noticing, but it's like John says you apostates may just be onto something. Oh, sorry for Will. Let me go find Will's. Where did I miss Will's? No, but thank you for the super chat, John. Let me find Will's thing. Okay. Will is saying something environmental is happening. Many people sick, can't sleep, specifically last night. I've been down mentally and physically for 3 weeks now. Any tips for people feeling under the environment/weather? Okay. Well, first, I have a whole article on space weather in the Love Your Liver program. Space weather is legit. There is science showing the full moon affects people. There is science showing solar flares and the KP index. Space weather affects people. Yeah, I mean, most of us know about stuff just like where let's say older people will say, oh, I can feel when the weather's coming in because my joints start to hurt. And the barometric pressure is making them hurt more. Like there's all sorts of stuff that affects how we feel that we don't understand. I swear I have a space weather app on my phone and they say that it takes like 3 days, 2 to 3 days for like a solar flare, the space weather from that to reach the earth. I'm going to tell you, I can feel that stuff when it happens before I even feel the alert on my phone. It's crazy. I talk to people, it's funny, I tend to associate with people who are sensitive to space weather in the same way that I am. Different people will feel it at little different timing, just like people get sick. Some people get sick really early. Some people get sick really late. It's all like there's genetic stuff here. There's toxicities. There's deficiencies. It all fits together. So yeah, Will, I can tell you recently, I've been noticing like some people are like, I got the coof. And I'm like, okay. And other, there is something, if you want to, I don't like to say there's something going around because I'm not too big on germs spreading and causing disease anymore. But there has been a ton of space weather going on. I don't know if you've looked into, but like the solar maximum, which is when you would have the most space weather, is like they talk about it in the news going, it's bigger than we expected, like it's stronger than we expected, and it may peak sooner than we predicted. So we are in the middle of a crap load of space weather. And this will, like Kelsey and I chat regularly, and we can basically just be like, how do you feel? And I might tell her I feel bad, and she's like, I don't feel good either. And then she'll tell me she doesn't feel good. And I'm like a little bit later, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't. It's strange. It's really kind of funny that I people who are not sensitive to space weather in the same way I am, I don't tend to jive with them. I don't tend to vibe with them. In terms of like being close friend types. So something enviro is happening. It's definitely the space weather's part of it. I saw a plane with trails going over the sky just yesterday morning. That stuff will fall to the ground. You will breathe it. For me, it's usually when I see planes doing that in the sky, it's the next day that I start to notice. I wake up stuffy and congested. And it's like, I mean, they just put stuff in the air and it's not in the air anymore. So it must have fallen, right? So there's oh, okay. Well, Joe, you can post that, Joe, if you want to post to spaceweather.com. Let me see what the app is called. I think it's Space Weather. Let me find the app that I use. So those of you who want to get the app, it's free. It's called Space Weather Live. One word, Space Weather, and then the word live. And I would just set it so that you get all the alerts. There's not that many from it. It only sends an alert when there's like a solar flare or like a high KP index or whatever. Spaceweather.com. Does this is that what's his name? I don't remember. Anyway, spaceweather.com. That's an option. Joe's showing that website. But yeah, it's legit. So it does affect people. And I wish I could tell you what it was. I do think there is, well, I kind of like how they said this white lung syndrome was showing up in China and then it's showing up in Ohio, but it's definitely not a pathogen. There's not a connected pathogen. It's something else. I'm sure Ohio. Well, so if you watch my EMF article and 5G stuff, just imagine this situation. What if there were EMF transmitters that had been installed all over the world in various places, and they could adjust the output or the frequency, or they could add stuff to the output of various towers at any time they felt like doing so. And if EMF was connected to triggering bile dumps in people, would it be possible for them to induce bile-related diseases in any location at any time they wanted? Because people are only getting more toxic. So you have to understand the EMF thing is an invisible trigger that they can potentially pull at any time, and you don't get to see it. You have no idea that they did it. And this is not just directed at you, Will. This is at everybody here. So the space weather thing, you can't see it, but it affects you. And we got the research on that. The EMF, I went over that in the EMF video. The EMF stuff from Sarah Viao, what's her website? Anyway, all those links are in that video. mindbodybalancefl.com. That's what it is. Tell her I sent you. She'll give you an extra free shipping and I believe she gives you a discount too for using my for referring to me. So I don't know if it's gmail.com. If you know that, Joe put that email up there. If that's right, I hope that's right. But yeah, it's Mind Body Balance Florida. But that stuff. So with the EMF stuff, in theory, you can do some of the EMF protective stuff, which I talk about in that video. And I specifically, this is what I use. Like on my phone here, this is the one that Sarah offers. And I absolutely feel like it helps. I've always felt like that stuff helped. I learned about it from a client who told me I got this and it helped. And I went, okay. So at least the EMF stuff you can do something about. The space weather stuff, I'm just going to be honest, I don't know how to undo it, because once you leak bile into your blood, we can't reach into your blood and pull it out. That's the problem. Charcoal doesn't reach it anymore. Charcoal stays in your gut. Sorry, let me blow my nose. So charcoal doesn't reach inside your blood. Certain soluble fibers can get inside your blood. Beta-glucan can. That's in oats. That's a popular thing on the Love Your Liver program. But anyway, things I do, I'll just put it this way. When I have space weather issues that I know, I mean, it's so obvious to me. I have such a cycle with it. I will go, the thing I used to do when it was worse, magnesium and potassium bath, which we talk about in the program. Now I really just need to I just don't, like if I had it happen in the afternoon, I just don't go work out during it. I don't do anything to aggravate it because I definitely don't feel like working. I don't feel like working out. I don't feel like doing much of anything when it happens. And then it goes away. And then I might go work out 2 hours later. Like when it lifts, it's really obvious. So for those of you out there who have been having a rough couple of weeks and oh my gosh, some of the sleep this week, like Will was saying, I had a night this week, I didn't sleep a wink. And my daughter didn't sleep that night much either at all. And my boy slept. So that's what I'm saying. It'll affect different people differently at different times. I wish I knew how to fix it. Sometimes more like if you're a little underhydrated, a little dehydrated, that will definitely worsen things. But again, I also find a lot of people overhydrate, so you got to fix that too. You don't want too much, you don't want too little. Magnesium and potassium definitely can help. And generally, I can tell you that since I've been doing the nicotinic acid, I feel like the space weather cycles affect me less. But for anybody to just dismiss space weather, like they're going to be like, Dr. Smith is wussy, space weather. No, when you understand it, I want you guys to understand. If you get space weather and you know when it's hitting and you start going out and you see everybody, just think about this. If you knew that space weather was a thing and you start recognizing your patterns when it happens, then you can just be like, oh, it's just space weather. It's going to go away. Give it a couple of hours. No big deal. But think of everybody else who has no idea of what's happening to them. Like think about when the CIA used to give people LSD and they didn't tell them. And people were jumping out of windows, losing their minds because all of a sudden their mind was not theirs. So what do you think? Do you notice how angry people are getting these days and how bad the driving is getting? Like this is affecting everybody. Most people feel so crappy on a day-to-day basis that they can hardly even tell the difference. They're just like, oh, am I on a scale of feeling 7, 8, or 9 crappy today? That's like their range. They're like out of 10, they're like 7, 8, or 9. They feel crappy every day. There's no difference. There's no real difference. They're just like, well, today's a good day because I'm at a 7. Or today's a bad day because I'm at a 9. And then when you start feeling really good, like you're at like, a 0, a 1, or a 2. And then when you feel bad, it's not that you're that bad. It's that you're used to feeling a lot better. And so you don't put up with it and you're going, what is wrong? But when you understand the space weather thing and you just kind of go, well, it's out of my control. It's just temporary. It's going to go away. I wish I had ways of fixing it. I will tell you, if I had ways of fixing the space weather episodes, I would tell you, I would do it myself. Basically, you're just trying to not make it worse while it's happening. So, but yeah, I do think like I said, I think the nicotinic acid, that has really helped. That has improved my mood even more. So that is something I would definitely do. And as Will's saying, we're noticing we are having problems eating normal low toxin foods too. So yeah, so this is one of the ways you can tell it's space weather. Is you're doing all the normal things, the things that normally have people feeling really good, and all of a sudden you don't feel good, and especially if it goes in cycles. Pretty common a pretty common cycle is in the afternoons. If you start afternoons, early evenings, if you start feeling bad and you start noticing you get real windy outside, if you start noticing you don't feel good around those times, that's probably space weather related. I'm not going to go into the details of the wind and all that stuff. But yeah. I wish there was an easy solution. Will, if you can't get in the bath, spray magnesium lotion, magnesium oil, all that stuff. Oh, foot baths. Yeah. You can also do foot baths. Absolutely. Yes. So, okay, I'm late. I did 2.5 hours. I'm glad I got it done in 2.5 hours. I think that's all the super chats. Joe, let me know if I missed any. I don't think I did. I'm just going to run through here. We got Ben's. Thank you, Ben. We got Nature Sounds. Thank you, Nature Sounds. We got Ramon's. Thank you, Ramon. We got John's. Thank you. And then we got Will's. Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go answer more questions in the inner circle after this. Hope you all enjoyed that. Feel free to share this video with anyone out on the internet promoting white lung syndrome as being vitamin A deficiency. Again, make sure to like the video, subscribe, leave comments, help us out, share this with people. A lot of people aren't going to get it. Here's the thing. A lot of people aren't going to get this right away. Share if you want to introduce people to it, introduce them to video 53 or 71 of the live streams. Okay. They may not want to jump in on this one. This was a pretty heavy meal of a live stream for people. Anyway, I'm going to go. You all have a great week and sleep well. Hopefully the space weather lets up. I actually don't think the space weather is going to let up soon. I think it's going to get worse. So just keep working on your health and just know that everybody else out there who doesn't even know anything about toxicity and deficiencies and space weather is just going to probably get worse. And they're probably going to start feeling like they're losing their minds. And the shot, somebody I know, a relative of theirs who got the pokey, just got diagnosed with acute kidney failure. So just imagine toxicity, deficiencies, pokey, space weather. It's going to get ugly out there. It's going to get real ugly out there. So send people here to learn more so they can get on the right track before things get too ugly. Okay? So y'all have a great week. I will see you all next time. Oh, can I get to my button? Bye now.